This was such a scam because what they did is they used the DC district to waive attorney-client privilege, to approve subpoenas, to authorize the investigation. Then they indicted him in Florida. But public reporting was offering glimpses into what happened in the grand jury room and the surrounding legal fights. How did the reporters get that information? Oh, because the DOJ was leaking to harm Trump in the election.
They would take something that supported a Hillary Clinton campaign talking point and they would overemphasize it and exaggerate it. They took anything that actually contradicted that narrative and they buried it deep. And through that, they actually laundered.
Judge Boasberg now out trying to enact some revenge. You remember this judge? He got obliterated by the DC Circuit Court of Appeals. James Boasberg, the chief judge. Same judge who said, Trump, turn those airplanes around right now. Trump said, they're already gone. They're outside of the country. So they're no longer in your jurisdiction, so leave us alone. The judge said, well, now, if you don't return them, I'm going to hold you in contempt. Trump took it up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said your injunction is invalid. And so the judge just kept this case going until Trump obliterated the judge in the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals came back down and said in a 2-1 decision, this judge deserved a writ of mandamus for being a mandamus. And now the judge has responded. So the judge is responding in kind of a separate issue. This is in regards to Donald Trump, and it's about grand juries, right? So this is interesting how when it comes to the Ghislaine Maxwell grand jury, it's like one FBI agent and like hour and a half of testimony, couple photographs, everybody's having donuts and coffee, not a big deal, because they're covering up. But when they really want to go after somebody, man, they go after them. So Boasberg has given us this background. He's walking us through the Trump case because Boasberg is ultimately going to unseal some more Trump records. We can't see any of the other records, but when it comes to Trump and it's harmful to him, they'll release it. So this is Boasberg, I think, striking back. But he says, grand juries in this district, DC, investigated Trump for 2020 and classified documents. Both investigations spawned a host of legal disputes over whether witnesses could be compelled to testify, whether they could cite privileges, and more. Records about those battles were sealed. So now the New York Times reporter Charlie Savage wants to unseal records from both investigations about claims of attorney-client privilege and work product protection, right? So Maxwell records sealed indefinitely. New York Times reporter wants some information about Trump attorney-client privilege. Court will now grant his petition in part and deny it in part as well. So a lot more records will be coming out on that one. Now, this was also a hack weaponized prosecution, as this judge will explain. After leaving office, Trump was embroiled in criminal investigations. It wasn't Trump was embroiled in. Okay, it's very passive language, judge. They attacked Trump and they tried to imprison Trump. It didn't happen to him like he was just walking down the street and it started to rain. It was an intentional operation that was orchestrated by partisan hacks abusing their office. Two of them reached grand juries in this district in DC. In one, the election case, a grand jury was brought in for allegedly conspiring to overturn 2020 and to obstruct the collecting of the votes. Although Trump was indicted, the case was ultimately dismissed because he won the election. Eat it. In the other, the documents case, a grand jury in this district. Okay, so this was the case where Judge Beryl Howell, this was such a scam because what they did is they used the DC district to waive attorney-client privilege, to approve subpoenas, to authorize the investigation. Then they indicted him in Florida, but they didn't do the investigative work in Florida because they don't have a bunch of hack judges down there. They needed the hack judges to waive privilege and to issue all the subpoenas, and they did that in DC. So they're playing both sides. Then they take all that information, just go indict in Florida. So that case led to Trump's indictment in Florida. That prosecution also came to a halt when Judge Eileen Cannon, amazing, said that Jack Smith was not a real boy because he had been unlawfully appointed, never a U.S. attorney. Get out, Jack. The government appealed, but then dismissed its appeal after the election. Like all grand jury investigations, the ones targeting Trump were sealed, but public reporting was offering glimpses into what happened in the grand jury room and the surrounding legal fights. How did the reporters get that information? Oh, because the DOJ was leaking to harm Trump in the election. Oh, for instance, newspapers reported that in both cases, the grand jury had subpoenaed Trump's lawyers. How'd they know that if the grand jury's so secret, Judge? And his lawyers had invoked attorney-client privilege. Maggie Haberman, Alan Feuer, they all were reporting on it. Publicly docketed court filings also offered a window into these proceedings. The election case, the government filed a motion noting that 25 witnesses withheld information. It also mentioned in some instances that other information was material. Now, Trump also filed motions motions. The government filed responses. They had disputes over grand jury testimony. The briefs recounted the government had filed a motion to compel 2 of Trump's lawyers to testify and produce their documents, okay? Your lawyers have to come in and testify against you because hack Judge Beryl Howell in D.C. approved it. Both lawyers had invoked attorney-client privilege, but the court said, well, there could be a fraud here. And so there's a crime fraud exception. So attorney-client privilege doesn't apply if you're perpetuating a fraud. You can't say, well, myself and my client are defrauding everybody, so we're just not going to talk about it. Why not attorney-client privilege? You're committing a crime right now, so you don't have that protection. Trump filed his filing also redacted versions of the underlying opinion and more. Now that defendant Trump has once again become President Trump, man, that must have hurt for Boasberg to type that, both criminal cases have gone away, but the public interest in them has not. It mostly has, actually. Hence this petition in which the Times reporter seeks to unseal all opinions, orders, and everything about attorney-client privilege. And the election kind of settled a lot of those indictments, all right? All of them, really. The people heard your fake political prosecutions and rejected them. Grand jury investigations also play out in 2 fronts, and there's ancillary proceedings. And to examine these issues, the judge says, we got to talk about grand jury proceedings. Now, normally they're very secret, but there are certain rules and a local rule here that allows us to release documents in ancillary proceedings. So it's not the main grand jury proceeding. And so the rule here, again, Boasberg is going to carve this out, saying proceedings ancillary to the grand jury or portions thereof may be made public, right? So Beryl Howell was waiving their privilege in a separate proceeding, not exactly the grand jury proceeding, so we can release that, says this judge. Petitioner points out the combination of media reports and judicial filings have already been made, but it's only half right that it's already public. So disclosures are sufficiently reliable if they come from sources with authoritative knowledge, but these are just unconfirmed media reports. So the court will release it. So these are not just unconfirmed media reports, and you can actually see the documents because they're not in the grand jury. They're in a separate portion of the litigation, which is appropriate to release. And so some of these things the court will not unseal, but turning to the documents case, they want everything, and the court is going to grant some of that in the Florida case. Trump has done much of the work for them. He's already publicly filed 2 versions of the orders from Judge Beryl Howell, commanding 2 of his lawyers to testify. And so that put that in the public domain. But they did redact some information, and so we're going to give basically the best evidence. So since some of it's already been released, we're going to release the rest of it. And in this election case, the court will unseal all opinions and orders and docket sheets about attorney-client privilege. In the documents case, it's going to unseal the docket sheets and Trump's lawyers' battles, but the court will accept redactions submitted by President Trump. So signed by James Boasberg in his final little needle and stab to Trump. Okay, so what if I got obliterated by the Court of Appeals? I'm going to now release some more documents that you don't want released. So JD Bat is back, had another question about this, saying, what's going to happen to these partisan hackers who are trying to manipulate our elections? Here's JD on with Maria.
I absolutely want to see indictments, Maria. Look, of course, you got to have the law follow the facts here. You don't just indict people to indict people. You indict people because they broke the law. But if you look at what Tulsi and Kash Patel have revealed in the last couple of weeks, I don't know how anybody can look at that and say that there wasn't aggressive violations of the law. What they basically did is they defrauded the American people in order to take Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign talking points and turn them into intelligence by the American people, defrauding the intelligence agencies, lying about what the intel said. They would take something that supported a Hillary Clinton campaign talking point and they would overemphasize it and exaggerate it. They took anything that actually contradicted that narrative and they buried it deep. And through that, they actually laundered Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign talking points through the American intelligence services. That's a violation of the people's trust. That's a violation of what our intelligence services should be doing. And I absolutely think they broke the law. And you're going to see a lot of people get indicted for that. Here's the thing that should really bother the American people. What do you want our intelligence community to be doing? I want them to be catching bad guys. I want them to be making sure that terrorists aren't going to kill innocent American civilians. I don't want them laundering Hillary Clinton's campaign talking points into the American media and giving them this air of legitimacy. It is sick and it's disgusting. It hurt the intelligence community, it hurt the American people, and it hurt the first Trump administration. We've got to have consequences for it, or we're just going to see the same play repeated again and after again.
Yeah, he's right. And that was only in 2016 that he's talking about. Remember, they did this all again in 2020 with the intelligence laptop letter and all of the criminal indictments, the ballot removal, everything from J6, the entire weaponization of the entire apparatus there. But I mean, we're not even to 2020 yet. We haven't even gotten there yet. So just wait till we get there and it's going to be fun to watch. Now, I I saw some comments wondering why they gave J.D. Vance the kid's chair for this scene, and I don't have a good answer to that, but I don't know. Is it kindergarten day or something? I don't know. All right, so that's J.D. Vance over there. We'll keep our eye on this. We'll see what Boasberg does in the future. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do.